The seagulls follow trawler. It's because they think sardines will be thrown into the sea. Thank you very much.
Talking nonsense. So I thought, no, enough's enough. Why should I put up with that? Talking nonsense. So I thought, no, enough's enough. Why should I put up with that? Don't back down, double down. Don't back down, double down.
Yes, it's the Monday Club. The Brothers Boyce are back this Monday, and it's celebrating another 5-star Celtic display, another 3 points in the bag, another element to add to what has been the most straightforward and calm start to a league season, I think, in living memory. Welcome aboard the Bhoycie bus, ladies and gentlemen. Good to have so many of you in the chat already. Hope you're all doing good. If you want to hit the like button, give us a share, hit subscribe. I'll get all that out the road quickly, and then I will come over to you, Jonathan. How the devil are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. All the better after watching that scintillating performance from Ange Postecoglou's men yesterday. I have to say, I thought Kilmarnock may have proved to be a bit trickier than it did, but 5-0, 5-star performance, 2 overhead kicks, and you know what? The best goal of the game wasn't even one of them.
That's Jonathan. It's a great point. That is a great point. And what a positive message that is to send out. 2 overhead kicks, and neither of them were the best goal that we scored. 5 different scorers as well. The positive vibes continue. The benefit of having none of these qualifiers earlier in the season is there for all to see. Hopefully it's a lesson learned as well for Celtic that going forward we need to focus on Europe as well more, because that coefficient needs to remain at that level where if you're winning your league title, you're straight in the groups. And if Celtic had focused a wee bit more on Europe over the past 2 decades, Jonathan, that would have been the case. And we'd actually seen improved performance. Everything would have developed more. I think you can see it already in a snapshot, Jonathan, this summer. The difference it's made is night and day. It's just night and day. And also, the fans not all at loggerheads at this time of the year is a huge thing as well. And not in a bad way. Obviously, it's just heated debate. But there's always splits in the camp, Jonathan, this time of year normally, because we've been patched out by a Cluj or something like that. And, you know, there's an inquest going on and we've got to play a Europa League qualifier and that's not the tournament we should be in. And then we're looking a bit rusty in the league. None of that is happening this summer. And I think a lesson needs to be learned that it definitely benefits us no end, Jonathan, having a summer of calmness, tranquility. Obviously, Postecoglou plays a big part in that as well. But without these playoff qualifiers going to Kazakhstan's and Ukraine's or whatever it may be, you know, these things all make such a difference. And we are reaping the benefits, Jonathan. Celtic look fresh. They're playing 1 game every 7 days right now at this stage of the season. It's completely unheard of for us. And on the park, it is showing. We look frightening right now. Let's just be honest about it.
Yeah, 100%. It's just, honestly, I've never seen us look so good at the start of a season. I can't remember the last time we started the season as well as we have done here. As I say, Kilmarnock, notoriously a difficult place to go. You're thinking with Derek McInnes in charge of that lot, who's, a very good manager in his own right, done a lot of good things in Scottish football, Derek McInnes.
Not against us, though.
Not so much against us.
Not
No, he
against
doesn't.
us.
He doesn't seem to have our number very, very often, Derek. But he does set teams up pretty well defensively. It's usually going to be quite a tight affair when you got run up against the McInnes team, and we absolutely steamrolled them. For me, there was nobody you could turn around and say had a poor performance whatsoever in that game. And it could have been as many as Celtic really wanted at times, particularly. I think if they put their foot down even more, because I think the funniest thing about this was, despite the fact we won the game 5-0, I didn't think Celtic were anywhere near the sort of levels they can actually hit, which is frightening to me. I still think they were only about second, maybe third gear for large spells in that game. So I think somebody could be on course for an absolute proper doing. And I take it as well, obviously, with the pitch. I think that does play a part in terms of it's not as easy for the players to play the sort of free-flowing football that they can do at Celtic Park. But I thought they acclimatised to that so well and just got on with it. And, any sort of historical issues we've had of playing on these plastic pitches, I think it's going to be a thing of the past under Postecoglou. I really do.
Oh, it's interesting you say that, because Ange was quick, though, to highlight after the game that, wait, now the plastic pitch did still play a factor. And he said, he'd said they were very conscious of it going into the game as well. What we've seen, I was speaking to Mark on the phone earlier. Mark's obviously a regular on the Boyce bus now. Jonathan's been contributing for a few months. Talks a lot of sense. And he was saying, did you notice there was a lot more long balls played, Jonathan, than normal by Celtic? There was a lot more in behind sort of pass. I hadn't really clicked at the time. I never mentioned it on post-match pitch. I hadn't really twigged. But the more he said it, the more I could sort of see where he was coming from. I thought, again, it's another example of, could you call that Ange adapting, Jonathan? Could you say that?
Adapting to play the fixture, is how I believe we've called it before on this
play the
channel.
Fixture, never, because he only plays one way, remember?
That's what some people like to believe, but it's not what I think is what happened with Mr. Postecoglou. No. And again, I think it goes back to even what we were saying last week. Again, you look at it this week, Russell, another couple of goals from set pieces. It looks as if it's all being worked on.
Yes. Have I frozen?
No, you're back. You're back. You froze for a second there.
I thought I might have. I mean, Jonathan, the set piece thing's a very, very interesting debate. Undoubtedly, it's been a focus point that we thought it would be. It was an area that we could improve on. We could always improve. But I think as well, Jonathan, another thing I want to hark back to from the archives of quotes that have been made, and most of mine are wrong, let's be fucking honest, right? And this one is still this one's still unproven, I would say. But I'm feeling more and more confident, Jonathan, a team gets that 10 put past them this season. I think it could happen. I'm not exaggerating. I know people think, oh, that's just fucking, you're saying stuff like that to, for attention, or you're saying it to be, headline grabbing or whatever, not actual headlines. But like, I just look at us right now, and I just think if we can keep up the intensity, the 5 sub thing's huge for us, because we've got guys coming on so hungry that it's like we hit a reset button once Giakoumakis and that comes on, Jonathan. It's like we just hit a reset button, and then suddenly Kelly are dealing with the Celtic they were dealing with in the first 10 minutes all over again, just albeit different personnel. Having that ability, if we can just keep going 1 minute to 90, and you get that wee bit of good fortune, Jonathan, and the players are all playing at their best, I think Celtic could put 10 past the team this season. I think I said it last year, and I think at the start of the season, before Ange sort of lined up the team with a more measured mentality, I think, after the first few rock and roll games. Remember, it was 130 shots in these first 3 games at home or something like that. Was insane. But I do think this year, with a year under Ange now, and everyone understanding the roles a bit more, Greg Taylor, for example, Jonathan's got the hang of this inverted fullback role. I think we are capable of putting 10 past. I also happen to think as well, one of the reasons it's leaning me towards that, I think the gulf between the other teams is really, really stretched now. I think the XPFL is always going to struggle to try and compete when, you know, there's two clubs that can spend millions of pounds on players. And, you know, Aberdeen get looked at for lavishly spending this summer, Jonathan, because they spent 1.2 million but brought in 6 or 7. Like, people think that Jim Goodwin's had a fanciful budget. It's madness. But I think there is now becoming quite a big gap. I think we are pulling away. I dare say Rangers will feel the same. But when we focus on us, I think, Jonathan, that the gap's that big now. The players are playing with that much confidence now. You've got a 4-year deal for Jota, who's looking more and more comfortable. You've got other players, like I was touched on there with Greg Taylor, more accustomed to their roles. And I think once we're in full flow, and I don't think we're quite in full flow like you alluded to there, Jonathan. I don't think we're quite in full flow yet. Once we're in full flow, there is a chance we could put 10 past a team this season, and don't be surprised if it were to happen.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised at all. As I go back to, I think we're only really in about second or third year. You only have to look at it. We're 1-0 up quite early on at Rugby Park, and then, you know, it wasn't really an awful lot happening in the game until Jota's moment of magic, and I think that was our second shot on target. You know, at that point, so it wasn't by any means completely free flowing and style football at its absolute best. But it was still impressive enough to completely blow Kilmarnock out the way, who I think will prove to be quite a stuffy team this season in the league. And I think particularly at home, teams will struggle to break them down. I would agree, you know, with the fact I think the gulf between the rest of the clubs and Celtic and Rangers has grown significantly. I think that's going to make the derby matches even more critical this season, because I just don't see either club dropping lots of points to the other teams. Perhaps that might change when the European fixtures start in earnest for both clubs and the group stages begin, and it's a case of trying to juggle. But you go back to the point that they can actually now make 5 substitutions. You look at some of the players coming off Celtic's bench on Sunday. You know, you've got Abada on the bench. You've got Giakoumakis on the bench. Okay, he's not been quite as firing as much, but you've still got a guy like James Forrest who's been round the course so many times and can still produce moments while he was given a new deal as well. So there's definitely so much quality that can come on to a game. And these are all game-changing players, you know, you're looking at potentially, even if you're in the mix and you're not having the best of days and it's a tight game. You know, you look at that bench and you think, Christ, we could really change this up a bit. And they've got so much quality there that it must be frightening for the other teams to actually look at and have to try and deal with that. And also glad you brought up Greg Taylor, because I thought Greg Taylor was absolutely outstanding on Sunday. I think he was brilliant, particularly that pass for the first goal. That's just not something Greg Taylor was doing previously. Greg Taylor has benefited so much, I think, from this extended pre-season. It possibly getting pushed a bit more with having the next left back in Bernabei has probably helped bring him on a wee bit. But for me, I thought Taylor, if I was to pick a standout performer, it would actually be Greg Taylor. And I know we haven't done this in a while, but if I was to give, shall we say, a knockout of the week performance...
Oh, it's been a while.
It would have to go to Greg Taylor, because I thought he was absolutely brilliant. I think he's conducted himself with class so far this season, and I think he's actually now grown completely into that left-back role. And my God, it would take something special before you even talk about any of the off-field antics with Bernabei. But if you're just talking purely on the field, I think it's going to take something special to dislodge him. I really do.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Greg Taylor, I think, is the epitome of what Postecoglou is meant to be all about. What we were told Ange Postecoglou does with players is he improves them, Jonathan. He gets them better. He does his best work on the training ground. You know, his recruitment's not been bad, to be fair to him. But it's how he improves players and, you know, getting them to buy into his methods, the style of play, the confidence that oozes out of them. Greg Taylor's now, Jonathan, when he's playing through balls like that, expressing himself. That's what it's all about. And he's doing it with such confidence that these things are now coming off for him. That would have been fanciful 18 months ago, Greg Taylor even attempting that ball. And if he did, he'd have probably ended up in his backside, you know. Whereas now you're looking at, he's just won, by the way. He deserves all the attention he's getting, though, right now. He absolutely does, because I would say he's been a whipping boy. I think, though, he's been a player that we've always looked at as said he's a good 6, 7 out of 10 each week. Gives his all, so no one's got any jip with him. No one's got any beef with him as such. But is he of that level? And what we've seen so far this year, again, as you rightfully touch on, with the benefit of the pre-season that we've had, you know, you are looking at a guy who's took his game to another level already in the first 3 matches, Jonathan. Already he looks like he's on another level. And I happen to think, we'd said it on here, I'm sure as well, Nostradamus or us tonight, but the last 3 months of last season as well, I thought he took his game to the next level, but now he's actually a few notches even above that. He is 100%, Jonathan, the first choice left back. There might be more reasons for that than what we knew. We will touch on that later. But 5 scorers, Jonathan, 2 overhead kicks. Jens has 2 and 2. Kyogo has 2 and 3. Jota has, 4 assists, 2 goals, 3 goals. I mean, we're getting goals all over the park. 5 scorers again, which I think is really encouraging. And it's subs contributing too. Starfelt, first goal after 50 games. Giakoumakis, I mean, he'll throw an overhead kick in every single time he's on the park, Jonathan. And not for the first time it comes off, though, as well. These threats off the bench and having all these different goal threats on the pitch at the start, it's a nightmare for other teams, Jonathan. But it also shows, I think, another aspect of what Ange's trying to achieve right now. And that is not to be as reliant as what we were this time last year on the likes of Kyogo. It's now going to be a real shared responsibility. I think when I was saying yesterday, the celebration with Starfelt, it does seem like a squad now, Jonathan, when there's dancing, jumping about with the subs, that really is pulling in the same direction. They're all very much in unison, Jonathan, and that makes sharing responsibility easier when the team harmonies like that. That will make it easier for everyone to take up their part of the workload. And I think we will see goal contributions, and high goal contributions from unexpected areas, perhaps, in the team this year as well. Any takeaways from the 5 scorers, Jonathan? Anything that raised your eyebrows?
Yeah, well, obviously you're looking at the overhead kicks and you touch on Giakoumakis and you must be wondering how many fucking overhead kicks have I got to score before I get a start a game, for fuck's sake, man.
I know,
I'm doing this almost every week and I still can't get a start. It's unbelievable. But if you're looking away from him, I mean, I think the one that always that stands out for me is actually the other overhead kick. It's Jens, because that's now 2 and 2 for him. I think he's looking like he could be quite the presence in the opposing boxes from set pieces. He looks like he could be the sort of centre half that could put together a sort of goal return that Chris Julian did a few years ago, or going further back to the Sound of Claxon, Martin O'Neill era of Stan Varga's time. I think James has that potential there. I really do. I think he's looking like he's a strong, imposing centre half that loves to go and attack the ball from corners. It won't be very easy to push around. He looks like he's going to be quite firm that way. He might end up proving over time to be a bit more of a threat in the opposing team's box than he will be actually defending, because I think the jury's still out on him a little bit defensively. I still think he's getting himself up to speed on his defensive element of his game, but he certainly seems to be bringing a lot going forward. And it was actually pretty nice to see Starfelt then come on and also grab a goal, because I think he'd almost been a bit forgotten about in the last few weeks where they've been out with injuries. Welsh grabbing the headlines in match day 1, getting a goal. Then Jens, as I say, scoring the last 2 games. You're beginning to think the centre halves are all beginning to find the net. Carter Vickers is just a rock, let's be honest. We can just admire him all day long as centre back. So I think for Starfelt, I think that would have been huge for his confidence as well, getting his goal when he came on. And even though he took a couple of attempts at it, you could see how much it meant to him to get on the score sheet, and everyone did go around him, as you rightly say there. And I think there's such a big togetherness amongst this team, and you only have to go as far as looking at the interview Jota does after the game, where he pretty much lavishes the praise onto Greg Taylor, and he's almost saying it's like an honour to almost play with a player of Greg Taylor's stature. And I just think that was quite a classy move from Jota, but the man does just seem to ooze class both on and off the pitch, let's be honest. So I think, if you're looking at the whole team sort of chemistry, it all seems to be there. It's all that togetherness, and it's going to be so important, I think, this season, particularly now with the European games just round the corner, that, when the going gets tough, I think these players now will have each other's backs, and I don't think there's a single really overly weak link in that team. There's nobody I'm looking at now, Russell, in that team and thinking, I'm not sure I trust them in the bigger games. I mean, I think Greg Taylor was probably the one most of us thought possibly was a weak link, but I think he's came on leaps and bounds, and I'm not as concerned about Greg Taylor now playing in Europe. That's how far he's came along for me.
Well, yeah, I think that's fair as well. I think right now we have to look at it. We can only base it on what we've played so far, the competition we've been up against. And right now, the team you're struggling to find the weaknesses in it. Can we always progress though? Yeah, of course we can. Have we faced our acid tests of this year, i.e. our biggest rivals or the Champions League? No, we've not. And that tune can change. But right now we have to celebrate, Jonathan, when the team's playing so well. I mean, it was a joy coming on to do post-match yesterday. Do you know what I mean? The post-match push show. You're actually looking forward to it. You just thought, that was fucking great today. Do you know that? And you've got to make hay when the sun shines, Jonathan. And right now with this team, they are playing with a real freedom, a real directness, and seems to be in the mould now of what we were expecting Ange to bring. I think it's evolved slightly from last year as well already, but again, you don't want to get too carried away. But you know what? I like getting carried away, Jonathan. It's what I do. And as a football fan, that's all we are, football fans. We're allowed to get carried away, right? So we will do that if we so wish. But when you look at this side, Jonathan, one other thing that's really striking about Ange's signing policy since he came in, remove James McCarthy, Joe Hart, right? Two guys in their 30s. The rest of the players have either been early 20s, mid-20s. I think Kyogo was the next oldest. I think he was 26 when he joined. He's about 27, 28 now. Now, the rest of that team, what also I noticed, Jonathan, was when they all signed on 4 or 5 year deals. Very long periods of contracts. All of them with their best years ahead of them. What sort of potential does this young side have right now? And obviously it will keep evolving, we hope, with proper backing from the board, and never keep your eye off them. But right now, when you look at the nucleus of that squad and you look at all the players signed up on long-term contracts at brilliant ages across the board, what potential does this side have? Could we realistically, Jonathan, be looking at trying to get to a Europa League final in the next 3 years, something like that? Should we be looking for just domestic dominance with this? I think this team's got more to it than just trebles, Jonathan. That's what I'm really intrigued to see anyway.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think you've got to be looking at it and thinking of how far we can advance ourselves in Europe, because it's been a very long time since we've really made a much of a dent in European competition, and it's something that we've failed at a lot over the last 15 years or so. We've not really had as much success as I believe that we are capable of on that stage. So I think that's something we've got to be looking at. If you're looking at UEFA Cup finals potentially, then you've only got to look across the city. We proved last season that we were more than a match for our rivals, but they also proved that they were able to be good enough to get to a European final. So it can be done. I think that's the message to take away from it. Absolutely can be done. You're looking at the team that we have just now, and it's full of young, talented players that could end up going on to play for very big clubs in their futures. So there's a lot of potential there for this to go really well for Celtic if they're able to hold on to their players. It might well take maybe another year or two. I think Postecoglou might need a bit more time to develop them. They're going to get a bit more used to playing at the elite level of European competition, particularly with the Champions League looming this season. That's a massive step up for most of these players. Most won't have been involved in that before, apart from the likes of, Callum McGregor. I wouldn't even imagine Forrest would really play in this, to be honest, unless he's forced to. But, he's another one with Champions League experience. Joe Hart, of course, has got a bit of experience there as well of playing on this big stage. But there's not an awful lot of them that have any experience of being at that level. And that can take a bit of time to get used to. There could be a big learning curve. I wouldn't be overly surprised if we have to take a beating in one game to learn some lessons, possibly more, depending on how the draw goes and how we set up. But the important thing for me is I think this team are just great learners. I think they've proven under Postecoglou that they will take on what he says, and they've all kind of came on. There's so many examples of it throughout the team of players that have drastically improved. And if Postecoglou hadn't came in, you're thinking there's a lot of players there that maybe wouldn't have lasted at Celtic. Ralston and Taylor probably being two immediate examples that may well have ended up not being able to fulfill the potential that was there for them. And I just think with Postecoglou, the more time he's given with these players and the more exposure they're getting to playing in these big European games, is of course going to bring them on even further. I believe if Celtic were to finish, let's say, third in the Champions League group, which I think is a realistic expectation. I don't think Celtic should be going into this just being happy to be a part of it. They need to be going into this And to be fair, they should be trying to get out of the bloody group. That's what they should be thinking. They're thinking, you know what, we're going in there and we're going to get out. We're going to get out. We're going to win our home games. We've done it before. We've done it before when we've not been fancied at all. You know,
Totally.
Gordon Strachan's teams weren't any better than Postecoglou's team is now, as far as I'm concerned. So there's no reason for Celtic not to have that belief in the camp to do that. But if they were to say finish third, I would say that would be a fairly successful return in the return to the Champions League. But you've got to be looking at the Europa League. Of course you do. You've got to be looking at that and thinking, this team are good enough to put together a run in that. There's no reason why they shouldn't be able to do it. They've got so much quality. I think Jota, for example, is a Champions League player already. Convinced of it. I don't think he'll be around, unfortunately, for very long. I think he'll be key to hold on to if indeed Celtic are to make inroads in Europe. But for me, there's just so much potential. And Russell, when you're looking at this Celtic team, where is the limit for you in European football for them?
Well, it depends. I mean, obviously the manager's going to be crucial and all that as well. Do you know what I mean? You've got to keep him happy, and that's going to take the board to do what they don't normally do, and that's going to play ball a wee bit. Obviously, Mr. Lawwell was photographed, Jonathan, at Rugby Park. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yep.
In the director's box. I mean, his influence, in my mind's eye, is not a good one, Jonathan. Either way, that'll just lead to interference. Right now, everyone's just, the bus, if you like, is just coasting along very nicely. Everything's going the way we want it. And I don't think former influencers at the club, or huge influencers at the club, that often at times I felt didn't put the team as the highest priority, got in the way, and it cost us an elite manager before. It led to us appointing someone who wasn't up to scratch, sadly. And now with Ange there, he's got to be, he's got to have his tummy tickled, Jonathan, as well here the whole time throughout. Got to keep him sweet. That's the hugest thing about all this. The players are definitely there to make an impact. I love this for Kevin Reynolds. I've had it up for a wee while now. I'm going to read it out. So he says he thinks the fact that they are young also means that they're coachable, the squad. Now, they buy into Ange's philosophy as they are not jaded by their football journey of coach after coach or team after team, which is so true. That's why I think that age bracket that we've got such a nucleus of the squad at is they are so coachable. They are just at the right time, and they've got a level of maturity and experience, but also loads of time on their side to still be coached and still to learn and still to adapt their game. And, right now under Postecoglou, we seem to have, the professor, Jonathan, for this. But yeah, I mean, it all comes back to, we have to be completely honest. If we want to have success in Europe, there'll need to be a complete shift in how Celtic approach these games as well. I think Postecoglou will be brave. I don't want bravery to border on naivety. I don't like to say that negatively and all that before anyone thinks I'm having a pop, but I felt at times, that last 10 minutes goal against Leverkusen, for example, last year, all could have been helped. I felt that was a wee bit naive. But having said that, was with a squad nowhere near now at the stage the squad's evolution is now. So with that in mind, could Ange possibly be now on the brave side of the fence as opposed to the naive one, now that he's got 12 months under his belt with this team and it's went from strength to strength? Potentially. Do I think we can make an impact in the Champions League? I like what you say, Jonathan. We've got to be looking at it and going, don't just try and touch this guy, Jonathan. Give it a fucking love bite. Do you know what I mean? Get right up there. Go for the top two. Why not? Win 9 points at home. We used to. Try it.
And there's no reason why they couldn't. No reason why they couldn't at all. Yeah, there's no reason why they couldn't. As I keep going back to Celtic at home, and the Naughties were unbelievable at home. I mean, I think there was only one club that probably beat us at Celtic Park between about 2000 and 2009. That was Barcelona. Henrik did it once in the Champions League, and then happened a few years later in 2008 as well, when we were in the last 16 under Strachan. And that Barcelona team was insane, widely regarded as one of the best teams in modern football history. So, if you're able to get results, and it's not even as if we were just playing we got good draws and we weren't playing big teams in that period. We were playing against some of the best teams in Europe at that time. We were beating them at Celtic Park, and we were certainly in games with them. We weren't getting shackled or getting beat heavily like what was happening under Rodgers when he started playing in the Champions League further down the line. So there's just so much potential there, and I just think it always comes down to self-belief at Celtic Park. I think it's a shift in the home games from everyone involved, to be honest. I'm not even Just saying that comes from the players. I think the fans need to turn Celtic Park back into the cauldron that it used to be. But I think you're looking at it, and for me, there is so much potential for particularly home games. I don't care who's coming to Celtic Park. If they're coming to Celtic Park on a Champions League night, they should be in for a game, and Celtic should be able to rise to that occasion and give them a game. Fair enough. I'm not expecting Celtic to win every home game they play against the best teams, but there's no reason for them not to have that inner belief in themselves that it could happen. And I think in some ways we've just adopted a mindset in recent years where we're just almost happy if we're only losing by the odd goal or two, and we're just like, oh, thank goodness it wasn't a thumping. And that's not Celtic to me. That's not the way we should be approaching these games. We need to be approaching these, particularly the home ones, as if these are games that are winnable. We need to be doing everything we can to win. We put everything out on the park, and if we get the result, then we've earned it. And if we don't, then it's not from a lack of trying.
Yeah, I like that, Jonathan. I agree. We will wait and see how Celtic approach these games. It will be interesting. It will be it's a good test. I think we're ready for the test now. But we do probably need to still strengthen a wee bit further, Jonathan. The rumours continue to float around about Ross Barkley. I put out a wee tweet yesterday just to gauge the mood, Jonathan. I found that if I give an opinion first, I just get hundreds of pelters. Someone tried to say no bother Paul Weller to me today, Jonathan. I don't really quite understand it. I'm quite cool with Paul Weller. I like Paul Weller.
I was about to say you've been called worse. I'm sure you'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah, but anyway, I decided to put it to the Twitterati, Jonathan. Ross Barkley rumours still float about. How does people feel? It did seem quite a mixed bag of replies. I think there's examples people are using, like, well, look at Joe Hart 12 months ago. Look at Scott Sinclair 6 years ago. And these guys probably come in a similar sort of mould. Former EPL proper players in there and maybe lost their way a bit. Would they come with an arrogance? Well, Joe Hart and Scott Sinclair didn't, to be fair to them. But Ross Barkley, to me, in terms of athleticism, I know he's 28, I know he's had injury problems and things. I mean, does he fit into that fast, free-flowing football that Celtic play under Ange Postecoglou? How much of the wage bill is he going to take up if he were to be signed? When we seem to be quite conservative in our spending most of the time, it would seem really odd, Jonathan, that we would go from such a tight wage structure. Remember, we were told Jordan Larsson would have broken the wage structure. So if Jordan Larsson's breaking the wage structure on maybe 30, 35 grand, then Ross Barkley, I think, would be obliterating it, to be completely honest to you. So we need to be realistic about, is this a lazy rumour? Does Ross Barkley really fit the profile? I don't see it. I don't think it's got any traction, but the rumour does keep reappearing. But for me, he's not a good fit profile-wise. We spoke about this in the summer. You look at Maeda, and Maeda's the definition in terms of his profile of what Ange Postecoglou was looking for in a player. Ross Barkley's not, in my opinion. He's actually not. I would be surprised. He would get my full back, and if he did join, I know it would create a bit of a stir. I think there would definitely be a lot of interest. He's 28 years old, 33 caps for England. But I don't know. I mean, for me, I would be surprised.
Yeah, I would be in the same boat. I don't think I would be, overly excited about it. But if it was to happen, of course you'd be backing him. I think it does create a bit of interest amongst the fans. Certainly, the stats about him are fairly good. And if you weren't watching him playing, you were just looking at statistics. Then he's had a fairly good career, particularly when he was younger. For me, this whole rumour, though, is more about his agent putting himself in the shop window. I'm not convinced how much of an interest there is from Celtic. I think there's been quite a number of clubs linked with him, and it does feel as if this might be his agent just trying to push some names out there to try and find him a home.
Murray Mintz agrees with you, Jonathan.
Yeah, Murray Mintz is coming in with the exact same thought process, and you're looking at it, and I think even Everton this week have came about and said they don't want him back, which I thought looked the most obvious place for him to end up out of the club's interest. And if Lampard doesn't fancy him at Everton, who, let's face it, are a bit all over the place at the moment, and certainly were last season when they were almost relegated, you're looking at it, you're thinking, are Celtic really wanting to be taking a chance on a Ross Barkley when it's going to cost them so much in wages? And as I keep going back to even last week, I'm not convinced he's awfully better than what we already have in that position already. I couldn't see him immediately forcing his way in. Maybe I'd be proven wrong, and I would love it if I was. And it turns out we got Barkley, and he was playing the sort of football he was 5, 6, 7 years ago. Then that would be a huge asset to Celtic Football Club. But again, you're looking at it and you're thinking when it comes to Barkley, I don't really think he plays the way that Postecoglou would want his team to play. I don't think he's the type of fit Celtic would look from their own budget point of view. So for me, it's a total non-starter. I think it's one that the agent has been pushing behind the scenes. And I think
what's the benefit though for an agent, Jonathan, pushing Celtic into the mix? Celtic can't compete with these Premier League clubs.
Well, I think from their point of view, I think they'll just be looking to get clubs named. So it's a case that Celtic are still a name within football, that can attract players. I think if they're putting Celtic in there with the other English clubs there as well, then it's just another name to add into the mix. I'm struggling to really think of what else it could be, because from my point of view, I just don't see why Postecoglou would be looking at him, because I don't think he fits Postecoglou's style. And I don't see why the Celtic board or anybody like that above Postecoglou would be trying to do a power play here and bring him in, because I just think he's costing too much in wages. So if you're taking these two things into consideration, by process of elimination, that brings you back around to the rumours starting from the actual players' camp, which would then be the agent. And I think he's probably, because he's looking to get Barkley a club, he's probably throwing names in there to try and generate a bit of interest and see if any of them end up sticking. And, Celtic can still be one of these names that can get thrown into the mix along with other Premiership clubs, and it might just get a bite from somewhere. Do I expect that to be from us? Absolutely not. Do I think he'll find another club? Absolutely yes. I think he'll probably end up in the lower end Premiership club somewhere. But all the best to him, but I cannot see a reason for Celtic to be doing that deal. I still think Celtic are going to be looking for a holding midfielder if they are indeed going to be doing any further business in this window. But I think as well, Russell, is another key point in this, is I think Postecoglou's already come out and said Celtic won't be looking to bring anyone else in until a couple more leave, which is, a bit disappointing in and of itself, because that seems to go back to previous summers where we've had these sort of similar sound bites from managers where Celtic are needing to almost clear up some wages before they can actually go ahead and push on. Particularly when you consider on this occasion, Celtic actually have the Champions League money and that ammunition there to go ahead and get deals done. But it seems to me, from reading between the lines, that there won't be anyone else coming in unless somebody goes out, unless, of course, there's a freebie that becomes available or there's a loan deal that can be done.
I think you're wrong. I think it is a smoke screen. The two players because he was alluding to that, wasn't he? It was like, one or two maybe need to go out and then we could bring one or two in. My hunch is that Celtic are waiting to see what happens in a certain Champions League qualifier over the next 180 minutes. Because if they qualify, they will spend and we will react to it. That's my hunch. So right now, the smoke screen is, it's because players need to go first. That will come into the equation. If Rangers start splashing money, which wouldn't surprise me at all, I wouldn't even be surprised if they signed an 8-figure player if they got 40 million cash Champions League money. I'm not even exaggerating. They're fucking nuts. I think Celtic would then react to that. And I think that's why they're keeping their powder dry right now. We tend to, Jonathan, over the years, we do tend to react to what they do. Whether we like to admit that or not, we have been pretty reactive, Jonathan, to what our rivals do. And I'm pretty sure that if Rangers are to qualify against PSV, which I wouldn't rule out, then I think we would have to concede Celtic will then go back in the market because they'll need to be seen to sort of compete. I think right now it just suits the narrative, Jonathan, because you're not going to admit that, are you? But it suits it to say, one or two need to go. He said, we've had 2 fucking years to sell a Yeti, Jonathan. It's not going to happen.
So do you think then if Eindhoven were to win that tie, then Celtic will be closed for business in terms of players coming in?
Maybe a loan, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible. I guess they might well decide to hold on and wait to find out what's happening with Rangers. Nothing would surprise me with our board. They have been reactionary in the past. I think that would be a silly move because, at the moment we hold all the cards, really. Rangers' future is uncertain until they find out what happens with their games with PSV Eindhoven, which will prove to be a very difficult opponent, I would suspect, for them. But that is one that they are capable of winning, no doubt about it. They've proven that over the last 12 months. But from a Celtic point of view, it shouldn't be a case that we should be looking at this and thinking, well, Rangers might qualify for the Champions League or they might not. We can call that a 50-50 game if you want, and we're going to wait and we'll flip the coin and see where it lands. Whichever way it lands will determine whether or not we spend money. Is for me a fanciful way to do business. It's just stupid, and there's no real reason to be doing it in that vein to me at all. So if that does indeed prove to be true, I would be pretty disappointed, and I think most Celtic fans would be if it was a case that we were being held to wait until that we found out what was happening with our rivals. But for me, whatever happens, Celtic should still be looking for another holding midfielder. But I'm not convinced they're going to do any more business either way, to be honest with you. I think they might just do a loan. I think even if Rangers qualify, they might just do a loan. I think the Celtic board might just well turn around and feel like they've justified themselves this window by getting CCCV and Jota in on permanent deals. That will be what they'll hold up as their sort of crowning achievements in this transfer window, if you like. And I'm not so sure they'll have a big appetite to spend more money on the squad, even though I believe that needs to be done.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but I do think, Jonathan, if you see your rivals, Jonathan, splashing cash, and Bob McBob's in the comments right now, and a good evening to you, Bob. I would be interested to get his take. If Rangers were to qualify, how much does Bob see his team spending between now and the close of the window? I see them spending the guts of 20 million quid, Jonathan. I think Celtic would be compelled to react to that, to be completely honest to you. And I know we say we're not one half of anything, but to be completely honest with you, we're one half of a title race. Whether people want to admit that or not, it's not my fucking problem. I'm just being honest about it. And right now, when your title challengers, if they were to go and spend, we would do the exact same thing. On to another thing, a wee bit of a negative story, Jonathan, doing the rounds today that's came to light. Before we get into it, we need to express as well here, Jonathan, that a lot of this is speculation, conjecture, and we don't actually know the ins and outs. All we know is the headline, right? And I'm not here to chastise Bernabei or give him a free pass on the rumoured allegations and stuff. There's apparently, he was arrested for drink driving. Be in court in a few months, Jonathan. It was early hours of this morning. Optics of it aren't great. But I'm not one, Jonathan, to dive in and judge too quickly. I think Ange won't either. I definitely think that Ange Postecoglou will get the full context on this, the full lowdown as to what's happened. There's so many potential avenues from this. It could be that he'd only had a pint. It could be that he was drunk and disorderly. We don't know, so there's no point in trying to guess when the stories.
The spectrum's quite large, aye.
The spectrum's so large that you would just be making a twat of it. But obviously, the optics aren't good when we're getting negative headlines like that, and that's not a good thing. Ange is probably the right guy to have at the helm to deal with this, which is good because he'll bring a calmness. He's not going to panic. He's not going to flip. He is going to deal with it properly. But what we've got in our hands is a young player that's been unable to get into the Celtic team so far. And with stories like this, it makes the clamour for him to get game time, I think, whether it be subconscious or not, it'll make the clamour for him from fans to get some minutes in the park diminish slightly. Just because, mud sticks, unfortunately, Jonathan, whether fairly or unfairly. And I'm not saying that either way. Mud does stick. What we don't want, though, is pile-ons, Jonathan, at this stage when no one's quite sure what's happened. And also, I'm a big believer in life, Jonathan, that even if you have messed up, redemption's something we should all be afforded. Yeah. Because I appreciate that there will be many examples where this has seriously impacted people's lives. And I get that. And it's not, talking literally of that or anything like that. But I also think, we live in a country or a world where when people make serious mistakes, they still deserve a road to redemption to fix it. He's a young lad. He has made a massive mistake by the sounds of it at this moment in time. I still hope that he is given, every opportunity to go on that road to redemption. And I think we need to be very careful that whilst we know so little, the media could jump on this, Jonathan. You know, we talk. You know, I don't want our fans jumping on him just yet. I think that'd be wrong. It'd be foolish with so little facts. We already know it's likely a lot of the media outlets will have a field day with this because it's juicy. You know, it doesn't matter about the severity of it and the context of it and the darkness of these sort of things. They don't care about that. As long as there's plenty of juice, Jonathan. There's a lot of meat on the bone for the media. So don't give them any more than that. I think right now we just need to sit back, let this play out, see how Celtic deal with it. They'll do a full investigation. See how Bernabei reacts to it. See if he's involved in matchday squads in the future. And then some of the details might come out. And if people want to make an opinion, then I think that's fairer than what they should right now. The biggest disappointment for me is right now, whilst we're on such a high, that it's just a negative story going about that. But, you know, the club just don't need. It's a shame.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. It's something we don't need at the moment. It's unfortunate as well, with it being somebody that's just in the door if it does prove to be true. But as you rightly say, at this moment in time will tell just how much of a situation we have here. I do agree with you. I think, you know, Postecoglou will manage this situation extremely well. I think he's extremely good in these sort of circumstances, and he's probably a manager that'll be able to get to the bottom of what's happened in a very diplomatic way without any emotions spilling over from either himself or indeed the player, if the player has indeed been caught up in what his allegations are suggesting that he has been caught up in. You know, from a footballing perspective, I think the fans are probably, you know, going to be looking at it, you know, and possibly wanting him, even subconsciously wanting him not to play as regularly. That is a very real possibility, but you have to go back and realise the guy is still a very young man. He's only 21 years old. I think most people at 21 have done things they're not necessarily proud of looking back at it. So I think you do have to allow for some leeway there if it did prove to be true. But it's one of those ones that I think you just have to let the chips fall where they fall and let time run its course until we know exactly what we're dealing with here. Because at the moment, it's a lot of speculation as to what is actually done wrong, Bernabei, because we just don't know the answers to those questions. I'm sure we'll find out more in the coming weeks. But until that happens, I think we have to let the club do their own due diligence on this one. Let Ange get to the bottom of what's happened. You know, on a footballing side of things, Bernabei was probably unlikely to be getting a lot of minutes anyway in the coming weeks, you know, just because of how good Greg Taylor's been, as we've already touched upon tonight. So, you know, I think, you know, on a footballing side of things, you're probably looking at it and thinking, okay, it's not going to be something you'll immediately see, because I think you can get clues early on as to how guilty a player might have been in a situation like this. If it had been, say, you know, Greg Taylor or, you know, Callum McGregor, somebody that was like, you know, one of your first team regulars, and, you know, then Postecoglou does have a bit more of a decision to make on the footballing side of things whilst this is going on. And I guess from the footballing aspect, because Bernabei's not featuring as heavily, it probably makes things a little bit easier on that part. But I do think, you know, as I keep going back to, time will tell. The club will carry out their own investigation. I'm not one to want to judge him too harshly at this point.
Jonathan, this is the thing, though. We've got Michael Ross coming in. Very good evening to you, Michael. But, oh, for fuck's sake, we all make stupid mistakes. Christ, the madness I did at 21. Well, you're not the barometer, Michael, by the way. Luckily for maybe us. But give the guy a break. I mean, I don't think we've been remotely harsh on the guy, Michael. I don't know either to give him a break. I don't think anyone's been remotely harsh. I think we've been very, very balanced on this. And we're actually being quite careful to say we're not making any snap judgments. So maybe you should have a wee break, because we're certainly not trying to give Bernabei a hard time here. We're commenting on a story that's circulating that regards one of our first team players, and it is pretty big news. So we will continue to do that, and we'll do it as fairly as we possibly can. And I'm glad that you were mental when you were 21, mate. But, you know,
I think it's one of those ones, Russell, as well, isn't it? Really, just because it is going to pull on a lot of different emotions, what the allegations actually are. You're going to get some people that, you know, have been involved in, you know, situations with, you know, drunk driving, which is what he's been alleged to have done, and are going to feel a lot more strongly about potentially him being left out of the squads. And then you're going to have, you know, others that maybe haven't had those sort of experiences and can maybe relate to what he's being alleged to have done, as well, and are more perhaps like Michael in the sense that they'll think, well, that's just a mistake and he should be given more opportunities. So it's one of those ones, I think, because of the subject matter, it is going to pull a lot of different reactions from the fan base on this. And it goes back to what we were saying to begin with. It's just something the club doesn't really need at the moment when everything is so together that something like this will naturally divide fans just because of the nature of the topic.
I think as well, though, Jonathan, it's great that, there's comments saying, we should be talking about the Champions League and going into that. See, to me, that's a wee bit happy clapperish for me, because that's like just then going, anything negative, we just ignore it. I mean, that's not really how my mind works. Any Celtic story, I'll be highlighting on the channel and we're talking about it, whether it's positive or negative. What next? We get beat 3-0 and we just don't do a post-match push, Jonathan, because, we'll focus on the time we won 5-1. You know what I mean? No, we need to just, the stories are out there in circulation, and we'll run the channel and talk about any story that's connected with Celtic. And if anyone else wants to talk about other things, then the last 45 minutes we've spoke about the impact Celtic could have in the Champions League. We've spoken about Celtic qualifying from the group. We've spoken about Celtic making a Europa League final. So, let's be fair here. Anyway, Jonathan, last but by no means least tonight, mate, we are doing a Predictor League table right now. The Bash the Bookies show on a Friday night has been good fun with Phil. I think we're changing the day at that, though. I think Nostalgia's going to move to a Friday and a wee shake up of things, Jonathan, just because Phil's show goes on for about 15 hours, so he was worried about having...
It gives him the whole weekend. I see what you're thinking. I get to run right through to Monday.
But no, I think he was... I think he was just getting a bit conscious about his work the next day, because it was going beyond 10:30 and stuff. So that's fair enough. We'll just let him do a Friday. But I don't know if you can see the league table there, Jonathan.
Oh yeah, just about. Yep.
And sadly, you are at the top.
What can I say? Top of the table, as Edward would say. Yes, there I am sitting there. Honestly, a bit of luck involved.
Top of the table.
But I'm sure Legan and Terry are going to provide stiff competition, looking at the others right up the top end. Obviously, Russell, it's good to see you out of the relegation zone. That's an impressive performance this week. So I'm rooting for the underdog. I know you're probably favourite to go down this season, but I've got a lot of faith in you, Russell, staying in this division and pushing on next season.
Such a little shite, mate. I'll not be getting any wooden spoon. It looks like Phil McGinley is in pole position for that. He'll come good, though. I'm convinced of that. And right now, I got my first correct score at the weekend, Jonathan. I called Hearts 4, Dundee United 1, so I was awfully proud of that. Phil, who's organising it, always got to put his own name at the bottom. And then joint top, Jonathan, Regan and Terry is strong. I knew Conor McCann would be in the medal positions come the end of the season as well. He started as he means to go. I think he's a serious threat for that title. But we're only 3 games in, Jonathan. We're only 3 games in. And me and Phil we'll record a show. We'll record the show this week. We'll do a wee half-hour one just looking at the predictions that we'll post it on the channel on one of our nights off. Do you know what I mean? So that can be the way that carries on, rather than it taking up an hour on a Friday, or an hour and a half, I think it was on Friday there. Because it's just meant to be a bit of fun, which of course it is. Charles Smith coming in saying Bhoycie looking down on the Bhoycie. And there is a bit of truth in that. There definitely is. Jonathan, we've got another quiet week ahead though at Celtic.
Yep.
And then it's the Hearts, the Jam Tarts, the Homer and Barts, the Watery Farts. Again, a real sense of calm ahead of that game. I think it's a game that whets the appetite, whether it be at home or away, Jonathan. I think it is one of those games that you look out for in the fixture list. I'm extremely confident again, though, Jonathan, this week. I'm not used to feeling like this in August.
No, I know. I'm looking at it, and I think obviously Hearts have got to have one eye on the Europa League qualifier. We've got them at a good time. The Hearts, the Jam Tarts, as you like to call them. We couldn't have asked for them at a better time to really get them, to be honest, right when they're in the middle of a Europa League windfall, potentially, because that game against FC Zurich is very winnable for the Jambos. And
do you think so?
Surprised. I think so.
Jonathan, do you know they won? Do you know they won the Swiss Premier League by 16 points last year, ahead of Basel and Young Boys?
They've started this season terribly. I'm pretty sure. I had a look at them, and I don't think they've won a game in the last 3 or 4, and barely scored any. So I think there is potential there for Hearts to upset them. I really do. I think it's a decent draw for Hearts, and I think particularly from a Celtic point of view, if Hearts were to be in that tie going into the second leg, then I don't know how important Celtic Park becomes for the Jambos, because they've got that eye on the second leg of their European qualifier. And I wouldn't be surprised, Russell, if this turns out to be an absolute thumping, not just because I'm actually going to the game on the Sunday and I'm very much looking forward to it, but I wouldn't be surprised if Celtic did another 5 or 6 on Sunday, even against the likes of Hearts. I'm not as convinced Hearts, this again goes back on the point after saying I think they won on Thursday, but I'm not convinced Hearts are quite as strong as they were last season. But I think, if they've got these games in between playing us, I'm not so sure that Celtic Park will be top of their priority list. Celtic can exploit that, and Celtic very much could exploit that on Sunday. But even taking away Hearts' problems and forgetting about the fact they do have those European games, the way Celtic are playing just now anyway, somebody is going to get an absolute doing at Celtic Park this season. It's going to be more than 5 goals. Whether that happens this Sunday or not, well, remains to be seen. I personally think Celtic could end up doing a number on the Jambos at the weekend. I certainly hope they can. But there's so much to be positive about, Russell. And again, it's one of those ones where Postecoglou could really make so many changes to his team, and you'd be so confident and whoever he decides to line up against Hearts, that they could go on, not just win that game, but win it very convincingly.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting when you look at obvious changes. I mean, obviously, we're all now pining to see Chaos get a start, but Kyogo keeps scoring. Interestingly as well about the Moritz Jens situation right now, Jonathan, with Starfelt. Starfelt came in, obviously, got his goal. Starfelt's biggest crime in a Celtic jersey to date will be getting injured. If Ange is remotely like what he was like last season, then I think Starfelt might have to watch from the periphery, because once Ange seems to have his settled too, if last season's anything to go by, of course it could be different. But if it's anything to go by last year, and it looks like he doesn't rotate in that area as much. One thing can be for sure, when we're talking about players leaving, Chris Julian is now 5th choice, Jonathan. I would imagine he's commanding £20,000 to £25,000 a week. Celtic have 2 weeks really to get rid of him, don't they? 16 days that he's got to go now. I'm sorry for what's happened with Julian. Again, what I think his biggest crime in a Celtic jersey is getting injured off that post. I really do. I think that's been his biggest crime. And I think Starfelt might regret his injury as well. Not that he could help it. But I think now that Jens is in, I'm just not overly convinced Ange will mix it up at the back. And I think when you're saying, we could make changes, I see the midfield being Ange's area where he doesn't mind rotating so much. But when Kyogo and Giakoumakis are both fully fit, Kyogo seems to start up top. That doesn't get rotated. The centre-backs don't get rotated. Maybe Tony Ralston could come in for his first start of the season. That'd be nice. But, I think the whilst we could expect maybe 1 or 2 changes, I think there's certain positions in the park where Ange isn't that comfortable making changes to, and I think that would include up front. I think it will still be Kyogo ahead of Giakoumakis until he picks up a knock or a suspension, God forbid. I can't see that. And I think centre-back Starfelt might need to get used to just get to come on, because I don't see him changing there either.
No, I think when it comes to centre-halves, it's one of those sort of positions you don't really want to be messing about with too much. People and general managers like to have a settled centre-half pairing with the goalkeeper, just so they can kind of breathe confidence, really. You don't want to be chopping and changing it too much. It just allows a relationship to be built more with the centre-half. So I'm not overly keen on switching them around too much. But that is unfortunate for Starfelt, because, if he hadn't got injured, he would have clearly started the season with Carter Vickers, and it would have been until one of them became unavailable that Jens would have got his opportunity to have made a mark. The unfortunate thing for Starfelt's point of view is Jens has grabbed his opportunity with both hands in the 2 games he's played. He's made himself very difficult to drop and put Starfelt back in. So I would expect Jens to start there. I think, up front, Kyogo does seem to start when they're both fit between him and Giakoumakis. I think that might be more rotated once the European Champions League games kick in. I think for the domestic games, he may look to bring one of them in. Probably Kyogo starts in the Champions League, I would suspect, with Giakoumakis being used more regularly from the start domestically, but we'll wait and see if that pans out. I would certainly think on Sunday it's going to be Kyogo. I don't anticipate him making too many changes in the midfield at this point, but I take your point. I think it is something that he is more relaxed about doing, is changing his midfield three a bit more often.
Yeah.
I think, the way the team's playing just now, he'll probably find it hard to justify making any immediate changes to his starting 11 because they've started the season so well. And I think even though
they're getting the rest as well.
Yeah, well, and that's it. They're only playing once a week. And even though that seems a wee bit harsh on players that came off the bench and made impacts, let's not forget, Abada got a beautiful goal against Ross County the other week. Giakoumakis is still firing them in.
Did you mean to say beautiful like Brendan Rodgers there?
Yeah, beautiful goal. Yeah, did you like that? It was that good. It was that good.
He just dropped in his inner Brendan Rodgers there. Beautiful.
He's a beautiful human being. What more can be said? But you know what I mean? It's just there's so much potential even off the bench, and I think a few of them must be chomping at the bit to get a start because, as I say, they've grabbed their opportunities when they came on. But I can't see him making any changes yet. But it just means we've got so much more firepower for when we do start having the midweek games kicking into our season. That the Celtic team, it doesn't stop, Russell. To quote Ange, it doesn't stop.
Yeah, you know it, mate. You know it. Well, Jonathan, we're midway through August. As we've said already on the show, it's been a strange period of calm being reflected in outstanding league performances. One game a week. Long may it continue. We will be back this week with various shows. There'll be the Nostalgia, there'll be TNF, there'll be the other Predictor League show, the Bash the Bookies, there'll be post-match pish on Sunday. I might even do a fan cam. Depends how I feel. Why not? Thanks again, Jonathan, for your contribution. Here's Chris Sutton.
Cheers. See ya.
Some of his comments about me deliberately trying to cause controversy. Well, I work in the media now, and you've got someone sitting there next to you who's an embarrassment to the media profession. He's an apologist. He's a charlatan.